There are many tricks to understanding any spell, any magical research, and one such trick is knowing that occasionally fate and circumstance will drag you away from your studies. This trick is easy to acknowledge but hard to accept. But accept it you must, as Yoda would say. If Yoda has said something like that ever before, if Yoda had existed in the D&D multiverse, I got off track. And that's the point of this introduction. Because just a quick reminder, I have now medication to combat the ADHD I actually had for the past 38 plus years, but also officially have had for 2 weeks. But in the month preceding that realization and diagnosis, I got off track, and I accept that in this circumstance, fate had other plans for me. But there's an additional trick in the productivity combo. First, accept that life sometimes gets in the way, then accept that you can get it back on track. And so this is me, back on track. Choo-choo, motherfucker. So when last we left our intrepid academics, we were listing the Faerun mainstream deities, their symbols and their portfolios, and updating a spell from the olden times that at one point of the Second Age was something given to anyone who worshipped them of sufficient level and class, and now exists only as a theory. The same disclaimer applies as last time, but seeing as that was several weeks ago, let's reiterate. Although I have crafted spells, and have an understanding of the power and balance needed for a spell to be successful, use these spells at your own risk. Mystra can, at any time, decide to cancel both the spell as it is being cast, and prevent the Mathemagica being learned just as the final minute of study ticks over. And with that, we will continue with the Watcher Eternal, he who followed duty and was the sole god who retained the trust of Lord Ao during the time of troubles, and was nearly reviled for it. Helm. He of the unsleeping eyes, the Watcher, the Vigilant One, the Great Guard, the God of Guardians. His portfolio is Guardians, Protectors, and the nature of protection itself. His symbol in the Second Age was an open, staring eye with a blue pupil, an outline painted on the back of a right-hand war gauntlet or the palm of a left-hand war gauntlet. In the Third Age, this distinction was no longer made and was instead merely a blue eye steering on upright war gauntlet. In the Fifth Age, the distinction swapped so that it was instead an eye on an upright left gauntlet. His divine domains are listed publicly as life and light, though I dare say with the further illumination of the age, we could add either of the crown or order domains. We didn't really touch on the personal lives of the previous gods, but we need to spend a moment with Helm. You'll recall that I've mentioned the time of troubles, and that Lord Ao forbade the gods from ascending back to the divine realms, instead doomed to live in mortal avatars until the tablets of fate were returned. It was the god of protection that Ao directed to enforce this forbiddance, and it was Helm who personally struck down the avatar of Mystra, resulting in the second retelling of the weave. For a time, especially in the north, the worship of Helm faltered, and many gods and subsequent adherents believed that the Mystra had been able to return if Lord Ao had been warned and made aware of the duplicity of those evil thieves. Then perhaps the many deaths of gods and mortals alike could have been avoided. That blame was laid squarely at Helm's feet. But just like Mystra versus Karsus, we can't assume that Lord Ao was merely reacting. The tablets couldn't be used for power, and his ability is so far beyond the gods that I don't believe he couldn't have found the tablets by himself already. No. Had Mystra ascended, then I imagined Ao would have just responded with a yes and, then demoted Helm also. He did all of this to teach a lesson beyond just punishment, to teach the gods about the ability of mortals, about the potential for mortals, and to remind everyone how divinity can be both given and taken, and in either case bears responsibility. Since the time of Troubles, Helm has been increasingly reluctant to appear in Faerun in avatar form, typically doing so only when a senior priest or temple is directly threatened and he is called upon. Helm always appears as a giant man in full plate armor, his face concealed by his helm. His height varies from one appearance to the next. When Helm manifests, all guardians and defenders within 10 miles become awake and alert, immune to sleep, weakness, nausea, and mind-affecting spells. Any such things currently in effect are automatically ended. He also serves who stands and waits and watches carefully. Careful planning always defeats rushed actions in the end. These are popular sayings in Helm's faithful. Novices of Helm are charged to be vigilant and fair and diligent in the conduct of their orders. They must protect the weak, the unpopular, the injured, and the young, and not sacrifice them for others. They must anticipate attacks and be ready, know their foes, and care carefully for their weapons so that their weapons can perform their duties properly when called upon. Never betray your trust is the guiding phrase for Faithful of Helm. The philosophy extends to thinking about how best to guard and protect, both in terms of weapons and the deployment of guardians, and to anticipating what attacks may come and having a practice plan ready to deal with such threats. The Faithful and the Priests of Helm train and exercise as to always be able to carry out their duties as best they can. For the specialty spell, I didn't have to do any research, and the DM would like to take over at this point. Thanks, Red. Or is it blue? Anyway, in this series, some of the spells I've chosen to recreate have been done so by me, and it is those spells that I'm not sure if you want to use them in your game. However, some, like the spell for Helm, have been created by a DM's Guild group consisting of Scott Bean, Heath Harris, and Jeremy Forbing. They have created the book, Blackstaff's Book of 1000 Spells, and the link for it is in this video description. It's literally 1000 spells, many of them inspired by the spells found in the previous editions of D&D, and all of them fun and interesting to add to your D&D game. Back to you, Blue. It's actually red today, but thank you. The spell I've chosen is known as the Mace of Odo, a 3rd level evocation. The casting time 1 action, the range is self, components verbal and somatic, duration concentration up to 1 minute. A shimmering translucent mace appears in your hand. You can use it to smite your enemies or intercept hostile magic. You can use the mace in melee. On a successful attack, the mace inflicts a 3d8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier, force damage. If you are targeted by or included in the area of an enemy spell of 3rd level or lower, you can absorb the spell with the mace. Doing so destroys the mace. This cancels the spell's effect on you, but not on anyone else who is in the spell's area of effect. At higher levels, you can cast a spell using a 4th or higher spell level slot. You inflict an additional 1d8 force damage for every spell level above 3rd. Ilmatra, the Crying God, the Lord on the Rack, the one who endures, the Broken God. Portfolio being endurance, suffering, martyrdom, and perseverance. In the beginning, Ilmatra's symbol was a blood-stained rack and was later modernized to a pair of chalky human hands bound at the wrist with blood-red cord. His worship became a lot more popular with the new symbol. Ilmatra appears as an unseen, watchful presence accompanied by a whimpering or howling sound. In this form he speaks, telekineses items about, and hurls spells. Alternatively, the Crying God can choose to possess any good-aligned creature who is being tortured, without having done anything to earn such treatment under the laws of the realm in which the torture is taking place. When such a manifestation occurs, the tortured's being body glows with a bright white aura. The being is healed and regenerated, all pain is banished, any restraints are broken asunder and torture devices smashed, and the being is set free, vigorous and alert. Ilmatra's priests tend to be the most sensitive and caring of humans. When new to the faith, since they see much suffering, they often weep. Over time, this constant tugging at their heartstrings wears at them, and they then tend towards a cynical view of life in Faerun. They are distinguished from other cynics, however, by their inability to ignore or pass by others in need. Even when a cause is hopeless, they must help. Ilmatari are taught to be firm in their principles and fearless, with the result they earn enormous respect with the general populace, but are often slain by brigands or those who hold different principles than they do. The Ilmatari are taught to help all who hurt, no matter who they are, and that the truly holy take on the suffering of others. Ilmatra tells them that they suffer in his name. He will be there to support them. They should stick to their cause if it is right, whatever the pain and peril. They are to stand up to all tyrants, resisting in ways both great and small, and to allow no injustice to go by unchallenged. They believe that there is no shame in a meaningful death. Some followers of Ilmatra take a negative or darkly humorous view of the world, and the church accepts them as well. Today is the first day in what is left of your life. It fits very snugly into Ilmatra's dogma, but most Ilmatari would add, so live it well. The spell of Ilmatra's domain that I've chosen to update is a 5th level abjuration spell known as the Endurance of Ilmatra. Casting time, 1 action, range, touch, components, verbal, somatic, duration, concentration up to 1 minute. This spell gives the recipient temporary hit points equal to their hit point total, and gives advantage on all strength and constitution saving throws. The recipient cannot be knocked prone nor moved against their will, and if they roll a 9 or below on a death saving throw, they treat the roll as an 11. When the spell ends, the temporary hit points are lost. Kallumvor, Lord of the Dead, Judge of the Damned, Master of the Crystal Spire. Portfolio, Death, and the Dead. The symbol is an upright skeletal arm holding the golden scales of justice balanced evenly in its fist against a steel grey field. Kallumvor walks Faerun quietly and unassuming when he comes to it. Since Kallumvor was until recently a mortal human warrior, recently in terms of, epochs, he appears much as he did in life, as a square-jawed fighter with piercing green eyes and a dark tanned face. He has a wild mane of black hair with a few streaks of grey in it, and is clad in chainmail and dark leather. He always wears a wide belt bearing a large cabochon-cut cat's-eye jewel at its front, but appears to have no magical powers. Those who see death as a necessary part of the cycle of life, not something grisly and abhorrent in itself, are the favoured followers of Kallumvor. They tend to be humans who derive personal comfort in seeing that disorder does not attend death, and to be both sensitive and practical. Gravediggers, mourners, embalmers, monument carvers and stone carvers who work in graveyards all give their respects to Kallumvor, along with the relatives of the recently deceased and Kallumvor's clergy. Kallumvor is interested in having followers who recognise that death is but a part of life. It is not an end but a beginning, not a punishment, but a necessity. There is no deceit in death, nothing concealed, nothing chaotic. Death is an orderly process. The followers of Kallumvor are not out to spread death and destruction in the realms. Rather, they seek to help others die with dignity at their appointed time and no sooner. Just as they do not seek to rush death, they also speak out against those who seek to artificially prolong their lives beyond their natural limits, including such magical creations as liches. All clerics and specialty priests of Kallumvor receive a divinely gained knowledge of the Faerun religion. The signature spell for Kallumvor is once again taken from Blackstaff's 1000 spells. Link in the description. Delay Death, a 3rd level necromantic spell. Casting time 1 action, range 60 feet, components, verbal, somatic and material, being a chip from a tombstone or a sliver of wood from a coffin. Duration 1 round. You choose one creature you can see within range to benefit from this spell. If the affected creature's hit points are reduced to 0, it remains conscious and can act normally until the start of your next turn. However, if the recipient takes damage from a single blow or source equal to its constitution score while it has 0 hit points, then it immediately falls unconscious and misses its first death saving throw. Likewise, if the spell ends while the recipient's hit points are 0, then it falls unconscious and misses its first death saving throw. If the creature dies while under the effects of the spell, it can be raised from the dead by normal means. Lyfander, Morning Lord. Portfolio, Spring, Dawn, Birth, Renewal, Creativity and Youth, Vitality, Self-Perfection, Athletics. His symbol used to be a rosy pink disc and is now a road travelling into a sunrise. Lyfander appears as a golden-skinned athletic male of exceeding beauty who has just fully entered early manhood. He wears noble robes constructed in the colours of the dawn, carries himself proudly, and dresses in the finest golden plate armour, if attending to matters that might turn violent. He has access to all the priestly spheres of magic. Spells he casts from the light sphere have triple normal effect. Wealthy and popular, the Church of Lyfander has opulent temples throughout the north, some of which push back the borders of good taste, as well as less audacious and more serviceable structures in most towns and cities dotting all of Faerun. The main room of a temple faces east and is open to the horizon, at least in part, so that the faithful can see the dawn. The high priest or priestess of a shrine or temple is often called a prior or an abbess, although titles vary throughout the church. The charge given to most novice postulants of the faith of Lyfander is, strive always to aid, to foster new hope, new ideas and new prosperity for all humankind and its allies. Perfect thyself and guard ever against pride, for it is a sacred duty to foster new growth, nurture growing things, and work for rebirth and renewal. Be fertile in mind and body. Consider always the consequences of thine actions so that the least effort may bring the greatest and best reward. Wherever you go, sow seeds of plants, tend the growing things you find, and plant seeds of hope, new ideas and plans for a rosy future in the minds of all. Whenever possible, see each dawn. And apparently build temples that are just on the other side of good taste. The spell that I'm upgrading for Lyfander's Faith is the first level abjuration spell, Rose Mantle. Casting time, 1 action, range, touch, components, verbal and somatic, duration, 1 minute. You choose 1 creature to benefit from the spell. That creature glows with a rosy radiance with a dim light that extends 10 feet. During the spell's duration, when the target fails an ability saving throw, they may instead choose to automatically succeed at it. Doing so causes the spell to end. Lira, Lady of the Mists, Mother of Illusionists, the Guardian of Liars, the Mist Shadow. Portfolio, Deception and Illusion. Symbol, triangle with the point down filled with swirly mists. Despite a fog of counterclaims and declarations, Lira perished shortly after the time of troubles at the hands of Cyric and Mask, who is in the form of a weapon called Godsbane. Mask betrayed her to Cyric, and the goddess's portfolio was subsumed by Cyric. Churches of Lira still operated, and their priests received spells, but those were granted by Cyric in the guise of Lira, though the Lyran either did not know, most of them, or did not care. With the reformation of the Fifth Age, Lira has returned with her original portfolio intact. The true appearance of Lira is unknown. Most senior clergy members and holy writings say she seldom looked the same way twice, but the recurring figure in accounts of her down the ages was that of a very tall, very thin woman, with long smoke-hued hair and robes that exuded mists. Her eyes were said to be black, glistening, and very large, seeming to bore through any mortal and see all, or at least make you feel that she did. Lira was an enigma since she covered anything she did and said with layers of illusion and falsehood. She apparently was content with her small following and has no great or glorious plans of ambitions. Lyrans believe that the lady can be anything, anywhere, that is not what it seems. They are taught to make folk everywhere doubt what they have seen, and in order to restore the holy mystery to the world. Lyrans must never tell the full truth when less can do, and never use a half-truth when a lie would serve better. They should speak truth whenever possible, only to fellow worshippers of Lira. The spell I'm updating is a 3rd level abjuration spell named Impenetrable Falsehood. Casting time, 1 bonus action. Range, self, components, none. Duration, 1 minute. While under the effects of the spell, the target becomes immune to all magical effects to discern if a lie is being told, including mind reading and zone of truth effects, and insight checks to determine if you're lying are rolled at disadvantage. The spell is good enough so that magical effects come back as a confirmation of truth, instead of merely being blocked. Lira. Our Lady of Joy, Joybringer, the Goddess of Joy, Mistress of the Revels. Portfolio, joy, happiness, dance, festivals, carefree celebration, contentment, release, hospitality, freedom and liberty. The symbol is 3 6-pointed stars arranged in a triangle with their points touching. Lira is ever-changing, ever-moving, ever-alive. She embodies happiness, freedom, and joyful movement. She is not an ambitious deity, nor does she like pretense, so she is apparently now vastly relieved at the reappearance of the trade goddess Walkeen, whose portfolio and worshippers she was holding onto during the goddess's absence. Lira initially appears as brightly whirring lights and smoke in midair, and out of this dances a young, sensuous, laughing lady with pure blue eyes and long gold hair. Sometimes the hair appears to be streaked with silver or with odd pastel colours of blue, pink, green or lilac. Moving on air, this 9-foot-tall, shapely, carefree humanoid female dances uncaring of dignity, literally revelling in the joy of movement. She wears a tight-fitting bodysuit under a series of gauzy robes that twirl and drape artfully as she moves, and she trails a sparkling wake of winking lights as she dances. These small radiances flash to mark at least the last 60 feet of her movements, longer if she desires. Lira attracts to her worship dancers of all sorts and fun-loving hedonists. She also receives offerings from lay worshippers and casual worshippers seeking her blessing for a particular party, revelment, festival, or other gathering. Lyrans have a well-deserved reputation as festival animals, and more than one adventuring company has found an empty till when it left the Lyran priest in charge. Lira's followers are believers in the ability, potential, and talent of the individual, and the celebration of life and its diversity. Often this leads to hedonism that would make a Sunite blush. Briefly, they believe that they should spread joy wherever or whenever possible, and allow no one to be sad when mirth or comfort could be given to them. They strive to brighten the hearts and minds of all the folk they meet, not merely friends and others who embrace Lira. The spell of Lira's faith that I've chosen to upgrade and change around a little is the Deadly Dance, a 5th level transmutation spell. Casting time, 1 action, range, self, components, verbal and somatic, duration, concentration, up to 1 minute. The spell causes you to move with a fluid and unearthly grace, dancing to a divine music only you can hear, but one that focuses the mind to the world around you. While the spell is active, you gain several benefits per turn. Your movement speed is doubled. You gain a +2 bonus to your armor class and advantage on all dexterity saving throws. Once per turn, you can dodge a melee, ranged, or spell attack, taking half damage. This must be used after the attack roll, but before damage is advised. This benefit does not apply to area of effect spells. Leviathan, Maiden of Pain, the Willing Whip, Patroness of Torturers. Portfolio, pain, hurt, agony, torment, suffering, torture. Symbol. It used to be a chalk white slim female, left hand, fingertips downward, with 3 drops of blood dripping from each of them. But I guess they decided it was too grim to appeal to anyone, so they adopted the more family-friendly black 9-stranded whip, the ends bloody and barbed. Leviathan, or Leviathan, one of the dark gods, appears in her religious art as a pale maiden dressed in white pleated armor and carrying a bone-white wand, a whip or a scourge that she uses as a weapon against her foes. She is venerated by torturers, sadists, and other twisted and evil people and creatures. Leviathan appears as a human female maiden of slim build, thigh-length straight platinum blonde hair and a cold, sinister manner. She dresses in revealing white silks decorated with silver chains or in black leather decorated with outlandish spikes. She speaks softly and moves with sensual grace. She truly enjoys inflicting pain and does not care if she receives it. More than one mortal adventurer had been startled to see her deliberately advancing so as to suffer an attack. When she bleeds, her blood is black and thick, like syrup. Priests of Leviathan are few in number but widespread in power. Opponents tend to avoid them since murder is the least that they will do in revenge against insults to their goddess. Women, both humans, half-elves, most of the races, dominate the ranks of the priesthood both numerically and in rank, and have always done so. Leviathan teaches that the world is filled with pain and torment, and the best that they can do is to suffer those blows that cannot be avoided and deal as much pain back to those who offend. Chillingly, they believe that true pleasure is only won through pain. In the Leviathan faith, the strong are those who taste pain and strive on. The Blackstaff's 1000 Spells book, link in the description, had the perfect spell for this. The Lash of Cruel Inspiration, a first level illusion. Casting time 1 bonus action, range, self, components, verbal and somatic, duration, concentration up to 1 minute. You create a whip made of psychic energy which sparks pain but also fortifies will. It counts as a simple melee weapon that you're proficient with, and you can use your spellcasting ability instead of strength for the attack and damage rolls of melee attacks using it. It deals 2d4 psychic damage and has the reach property. Until the spell ends, in addition to using the whip normally as a weapon, you can also use the whip on a willing creature as a bonus action. When you do so, the creature takes psychic damage equal to your proficiency bonus plus your spellcasting ability modifier, which cannot be reduced by any means. However, the next time that creature rolls a saving throw before the end of its next turn, it makes the saving throw with advantage. At higher levels, casting the spell of a 2nd or 3rd level slot, the damage of the whip is 3d4. If the spell slot is 4th or 5th, it's 4d4. A spell slot of 6th level or higher is 5d4. Malar, the Beast Lord, Lord of Beasts, the Black Blood, the Ravaging Bear. Portfolio: Hunters, Marauding Beasts and Monsters, Blood, Bloodlust, Evil Lycanthropes, Stalking. Symbol: used to be a brown-furred bestial claw with long curving talons stripped with flesh-red blood, and is now more simply a clawed paw. Huh. My husband, the Orc Paladin, that has a bear claw tattoo on his arm. I wonder if he acknowledges Malar in some way. Anyway, Malar is worshipped by hunters who revel in the kill or who hunt for sport or to access fallen rangers, sentient carnivores and lycanthropes. Those who suffer the depredations of wild beasts attempt to placate the Beast Lord with offerings of freshly killed and bloody meat, but Malar rarely recognizes their entreaties. In his more favourable aspects, he is revered by beings who identify with the untamed nature, grace, and amorality of predators. Malar favours 2 forms when he stalks the realms. As the Beast, he appears as a man-high, cat-like beast, sleek and supple in its movement. His ebony fur is matted with blood, and his talons and fangs endlessly drip blood. The beast cannot and does not speak. As the Master of the Hunt, also known as the Wild Hunter, Malar appears as a black-furred, 12-foot-tall humanoid with red eyes above a waffling, flesh-shaped hole rather than a nose and mouth, and a large rack of antlers that he can use to slash or stab at targets. Malar can speak in this form and can cause his antlers to melt away and reappear at will, allowing him to avoid damage to his rack and to prevent opponents from trapping him by ensnaring his antlers. The Master of the Hunt is typically accompanied by a pack of 21 dire wolves, winter wolves in polar regions, of the largest possible size. Malar is not a popular god with many devoted followers. Like Umberlee, he is invoked usually to prevent his intercession, usually heralded by wild beasts, as opposed to beseeching it. Groups devoted to following him are present, however, terrorizing civilized areas and surviving by poaching what they need. Survival of the fittest and winnowing of the weak are Malar's legacy. A brutal, bloody death has great meaning. May you die an old man's death is an insult amongst Malarites. The hunt is the fulcrum of life and death, and the focus point of life is the challenge between the hunter and the prey, the judgment of those who may live or die. Malarites are expected to view every important task as a hunt and to remain ever alert and alive. They must walk the wilderness without trepidation, as Malar does, and must show no fear in the hunt. By being bold, they expect to win the day. Blackstaff's 1000 spells, link below, go buy it, has another great spell for Malarites, the 5th level enchantment called Rage Beacon. Casting time, 1 action, range 30 feet, components verbal and somatic, duration, concentration, up to 1 minute. Choose a point within rage. Every creature within 10 feet of that point must make a wisdom saving throw. Those that fail are filled with the overwhelming desire to murder you. They will move towards you as soon as they can, and though they will not move into an obviously dangerous area, if the creature can get to you, they will hunt you. If they cannot, the spell ends for that creature. Creatures affected by the spell will use the dash action to get close to you, and once within melee range will target you with all of their attacks. The creatures will perform no other actions. The creatures targeted by the spell have advantage on all melee attacks against you. And that's where we're going to leave today. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the lecture. Clicking the like button and subscribing helps me in mysterious and arcane ways, so please do so. Next time, we'll continue on with the list, starting with a god who will definitely steal the show. Until then, to be continued.